For nearly 2 decades, some of the brightest engineers in the world chased the same dream: building a human-powered airplane to win the £50,000 Kramer Prize. And every attempt ended in the same way: crashes and failures. The problem was that fixing those complex aircraft could take months or even a year before their next attempt. Then, in 1976, along came Paul MacCready. He was a glider pilot, an engineer, and, by his own admission, deeply in debt. He realised he needed the prize money just to pay back a loan. But his breakthrough wasn't aerodynamic. It was cognitive. MacCready asked a different question. Not, how do you build a human-powered aeroplane? But, how do you build a plane you can rebuild in hours, not months? So he stitched together aluminium tubing and piano wire into a giant fragile contraption called the Gossamer Condor. It was ugly. It broke constantly. But that was the point. MacCready's team could crash before lunch, rebuild by afternoon, and try again before dinner. Some days they flew 3 or 4 different prototypes. After just 6 months of this crash, learn, build cycle, the Condor flew a controlled figure 8 at a dusty airfield in California. On August 23, 1977, cyclist Brian Allen pedalled it into the record books and claimed the prize. So what's the lesson we can take away from the story? Sometimes we fail not because the problem is impossible, but because we're just asking the wrong questions.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dhanda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, being an effective product thinker still requires that human touch. Join me in a mission to champion human skills to help product teams boost creativity, enhance collaboration, and communicate with clarity. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Dear friend, thank you so much for joining me today on the Superpower School podcast. I'm your host, Paddy Dhanda, and apologies, I've kind of been on holiday for a while and just haven't published anything. But hopefully we're back on it, and there's going to be some great new episodes coming out. On today's show, I have Laura Ashley Timms, who's a global leader in coaching, COO of Notion, and architect of award-winning change programs for FTSE and Fortune 500 companies across the US, Asia, and Europe. Recognized as one of the UK's top executive coaches and one of 40 outstanding global women, she has won major accolades for innovation and learning design. She is also the co-author of the best-selling book, The Answer is a Question: The Missing Superpower That Changes Everything, and will transform your impact as a manager and leader. And it's the winner of a distinguished favorite award at the NYC Big Book Awards. Oh my God, that is such a mouthful there, Laura, because you just got so many accolades. So good to have you on the show.
Hi, Paddy. It's absolutely brilliant to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And Laura, what superpower are you bringing to this particular episode?
Well, you sort of said it in the introduction there, Paddy. The clue was we're bringing the missing superpower, of course, the missing superpower that changes everything. In fact, as you also said, it's a superpower that is a really easy way to transform your impact if you're a manager or a leader. But also, actually, if you're just a friend, a colleague, a parent, a partner, it's a superpower that you can use almost in anything you're doing. And what the superpower is the ability to adopt what we call an operational coaching style of management, which what that really means is that you're going to use more of an inquiry-led approach to your day-to-day interactions. It really put simply, the superpower is learning to tell less and ask more, but not just ask any questions. Asking questions that are for the benefit of the other person to really help them have the insights, build confidence, and build capability. So not asking stuff for yourself, but really being there for the others. If you learn this one superpower, your career could be transformed and you'll be less stressed and enjoy work so much more.
Wow, that's a massive commitment right there, Laura. So I'm thinking anyone listening to this has just got a little bit closer to their speakers or whatever device they're listening to, because you're not going to want to miss this episode. And as we were talking just before we kicked off, I got to know you come from, or you're living in the town that I used to live in, or at least I was born in, which is Leamington Spa. For anyone that doesn't know about Leamington, sell it to us, Laura. Why should people come to Leamington?
Well, it's a best kept secret in this country, so I'm not sure I want to sell it to everyone because I want to. But it actually won a few years ago the happiest town in the country in the UK. So I don't know if you have a global audience or a UK audience, but it's right in the middle of the UK. It's in this golden triangle with beautiful towns around it. We have Stratford-upon-Avon, we have Warwick and Leamington. They're very different towns, but all really close together. And it's just a really positive, happy environment that you can get anywhere in the country in such a little amount of time. So it's a good sized town with lots of activities, but you can be in London in around 20 minutes. You can be up north in a couple of hours. When you go to Leeds or Manchester, you've got airports on your doorstep. It is really accessible. In fact, I am a Londoner. I'm a Cockney by birth. And I was born in the sound of Bow Bells, and I moved back to Bow early in my career when I was living in London, having had a family that spent their life getting out of the East End of London. And it used to take me longer to get from Bow, which was in Zone 2 in central London, to Heathrow Airport than it does from Leamington Spa.
Wow. Actually, I've had that situation. When I've been in London previously, I used to have a team member who was like, Paddy, where are you from? And I'd be like, Birmingham. And he was from, I don't know, Southall or somewhere. And I remember him saying once, oh, you're like the offshore team, aren't you? Because, you're not from around here. And I was like, dude, it takes me probably just as long to get in the office as it does for you. But anyway, I think we sometimes forget just how good or bad the public transport is in certain areas. So it can be the same time. Well, you've written this book. Actually, you've co-written this book. The Answer Is a Question. I love that title. I think it just creates this curiosity to know more. What inspired you to write it? And why did you feel that this message was really, I guess, urgent now, especially for leaders and product teams? Because a lot of the listeners of this podcast are either leaders in product teams or they're working as team members.
Yes, it's really interesting. We'd wanted to write this book for an awful long time. I mean, years, probably 5 years. We started thinking about writing about 5 years before we finally wrote it. So the real catalyst actually came when we did a big study for the government. The government wanted to know if our methodology and what we did could drive UK productivity, which sounds like a massive ask. But we kind of jumped into the idea that we would get involved in this big research project. And London School of Economics became our evaluation partner. So you kind of go big or go home moment. And when we completed this project, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit later, but at the end of it, the government, who had obviously invested in trying to get some data out of us and this study, turned around and said, oh, no, you now really have a due diligence, having completed this very important study, to share it. How are you going to share it? How are you going to make it really accessible? But of course, this study had got all of our IP in it, and all of our know-how is all based on our program. And we were like, yeah, but this is ours. And so we had a real coming of, having to really decide what we were going to do. And we decided we were going to write the best possible book. And we ended up in the second draft, not the first draft, putting everything we could into this book to really make it helpful and useful for all managers and leaders, and decided at that moment really that our whole remit of what our business was about was going to change quite dramatically, and that it was much more of having a global mission and less about our personal organization. So we wrote the book to really help managers and leaders everywhere, all over the world, really learn how to move away from this really challenging, stressed life they've got to have a new purpose for their sort of role as a manager. And we very much came from the point of the helping the manager. If you are a manager listening to this, you probably haven't got very much time. You're overwhelmed. You could be stressed. You might have, struggling with disengagement in your team. You've had to really adapt how you manage since the pandemic in terms of hybrid working, having to really understand all your team's life work balances, even your own balance between being in the office, out the office, what's really important to you now, how your values might have changed. We've got to be much more conscious of well-being for our colleagues than we ever used to be. We're managing 5 generations of teams, not just 2 or 3 like we used to, and they've all got really different needs. And most of us are on a million miles from having challenging conversations, if we're being honest. And within all of this, about 82% of us are what we'd call accidental managers. We ended up getting promoted because we were really good at a technical job we were doing, and we were subject matter experts, not because we were really, really excited about looking after the people in our team. With all of that, and you've got all of that stress, we wrote this book to say, right, if this is the reality of where we are, how are we going to change that and really make being a manager fun, enjoyable, and fantastic for the cultures we can create?
I was just connecting with a few of the points you were talking about there. I remember as I was a software engineer way, way back, and I had a manager who was also a really good software engineer, but a terrible manager. And I mean, he was a lovely chap, but there was no structure to our one-to-ones. All of the people side of stuff was always done really badly. And it was a clear example of, as you mentioned, some of us, we can be really good at the thing that we're recruited to do, but then the only way to progress is to become a manager, and then you inherit people, and that's a whole different role. And I can just imagine a lot of people out there would be struggling with that, because I don't think many training courses that are offered in corporate, they tell you the logistical stuff, right? Like, here, you must use this template for a one-to-one. This is how you do things. But the mindset aspect and that shift is always missing for me. I think that's really great that you've touched upon that in this book.
Yes, absolutely. You're spot on, Paddy, and everything you just said. Some lovely people that we end up working for who are genuinely fantastic at their job. They're absolute subject matter experts, but they're not talented managers. And it's not because they don't want to be or they don't care. They often do. They're doing their best. But if you think about it, we're all Frankenstein managers. We've all come to the role. If we haven't been formally trained and we haven't been shown new techniques and different ways of actually applying some sort of key skills or superpowers, as they're calling them, that can really make an impact, then we're just taking, in the same way Frankenstein, we're taking a book we've read and lugging it on, one bit. Well, that sounds good. Or we've worked for one manager who did do quite a good job, so let's do a bit of what he did. And then you think about the manager you didn't get on, who wasn't so helpful on the people side, Paddy. Let's try and not do that. So we put that on as well as part of our Frankenstein persona. And we just go on a course, we learn a bit more, and we maybe try and remember to do a bit of that. And we're just made up of these bits and pieces of knowledge we've got about what it means to be a manager. So we're all Frankenstein managers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But how do we actually learn the human skills to really engage and make management exciting and fun again?
And the book talks about the STAR model. For anyone who hasn't heard of this model, could you tell us what it is and what's the simplest way to start using it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Simplest way, that's a harder question, interestingly. But so what is the STAR model? So within the book, we explore a number of concepts, but one of the most important concepts we explore is a model that we have designed called the STAR model. And the STAR model is a way of helping you apply and utilize operational coaching in the flow of work in the moment, as you're walking down a corridor, as you are chatting to someone, if someone comes to you with an issue or a problem. And we wanted to keep something really, really simple. So the STAR model is made up of 2 halves. The first half, and it's the only coaching model. First thing is, it's the only coaching model in the world that is focused and designed explicitly for the manager and the leader. It's not designed for the coachee. All other coaching models you've come across in the past, whether it's Grow model and every other model you might have come across, are all designed, and they're derivatives of executive coaching models where someone's asking the questions and you're the coach, and then someone else is the coachee, and you've got no relationship with that person. You're meant to be distant. You're meant to hold the coach's agenda. The STAR model recognizes that you have an agenda yourself. You're a manager. So actually, what can you do to change and help how you behave in the moment? So it's not so much about the other person. It's about you and your skills. So the first half of the model is S and T. So it's four steps, really easy to remember. So S is for stop. And this is all about sort of stepping back and remember in the moment to stop your natural instinct of going and helping someone, telling someone what to do. So learn to stop in a split second and then think, T is for think, is this a coachable moment? Is this a situation where I could ask a question instead of telling someone what to do? So S and T is that behavioral change, that shift. And then once you've learned how to, in a split second, as someone comes to you with a problem, learn how to stop and think, which when you get it really quickly, then you can go into the coaching half of the model, which is A, and A stands for ask. So obviously ask is all about powerful questions, but also actively listen. So it's really looking at how you can craft questions for the benefit of others. And we go quite deep into what that means. And then R is for result, because still recognizing that you are a manager or a leader, you can't just have a cozy conversation. There's no outcome, however small. It's not a big goal or any long-term plan we're looking at. It could be a one action that someone's going to take, but how are you going to follow up as a manager or leader of how that went and what's the next step? So STAR is how you spell star. So it's stop, think, ask, and get a result.
Oh, brilliant. I love that. I love those simple frameworks that become really, really powerful.
The second half, which I didn't answer, is, what's the simplest way of actually using it? And that is harder because it's a behavioral change model. So we're trying to break down habits here. So actually the way of doing it has been quite structured and designed to permanently change people's habits. And we've designed, accredited programs around that so that people can learn in kind of an hour a week, a bit by bit, a few half-hour kind of changes, but consistently over 10 to 12 weeks to really embed and develop these habits. So there are formal programs called Star Coach and Star Manager. The simplest way, though, that is a commitment. The simplest way is we have broken a lot of this down in the book. The answer is a question and created mini missions. It won't obviously get the same result as the full program, but it will help people just start to practice and have a go at utilizing some of these ideas.
I was really curious about the think stage because there's a decision point there. You said, is this a moment where you could ask a follow-up question as opposed to giving an answer? How do you decide that? What's the thought process there?
It's really good. So we've designed a little decision tree actually around think, is this a coachable moment? The reality is almost all moments are coachable moments, but it's not always appropriate for you to coach at that point. There could be a whole range of reasons. Depending on what industry and sector you're in, you might be in an emergency situation. And in an emergency situation, clearly it's not a coachable moment. In those situations, though, there is a if not now, then when. Doesn't mean it's not something you can revisit after you've resolved the emergency. So it's about making a split second decision about, is this a coachable moment? It could be that you generally don't think because of the state of the other person in front of you that they're going to be receptive to it, that they're not in a place that you could ask them a question. Or it might be you're not. You're running out to a meeting, you're trying to catch a train yourself, you've got an emergency phone call that your family's just rung about. There could be a host of reasons why it's not a coachable moment, and that's absolutely okay. But the reality is, at least probably 80 or 90% of the time, it is a coachable moment. And it's creating the habit to recognize that and act upon it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for that. Which then brings me on to some scenarios, because I think for me, that's one of the best ways I learn is when I apply something to a scenario that I'm familiar with. So I'm going to pick out a couple here that I often come across. And I think, especially if you're working in that sort of product world, you're more than likely to encounter at least one of these. So the first one is urgent problems. Now, we're all busy people. We've got a shortage of time, always rushing from one meeting to another. And what if a team member raises a really tricky problem, but you're really stuck for time? Like, how do you respond to that? How do you deal with that situation using the STAR model?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, Paddy, because our gut response, our habit is to want to give a quick answer. So, if they've raised a difficult problem and we haven't got time, we've just said one of the most biggest challenges for all managers is they haven't got time for this. They're busy, they're stressed, they're overworked. So someone comes to you and it's like, what do I do in this instance? Our tendency is to give a quick answer, just throw something back at them and tell them what to do. So we go straight into tell mode to solve their problem. And if we don't think we can do it quickly, we'll take it off them and go, don't worry, give that to me, I'll deal with it later. So we either tell someone what to do, and in that moment, we're robbing them of any insight, any learning, or any knowledge, and actually confidence and resilience or anything else. But we do it if we come from a good place, we try and help them, they've asked the question. Or the second thing we do is we take it off them and then we end up doing it. So now we're doing the work of our team. So we're now doing too much of the lower value work that other people should be doing, or redoing, even worse, the work that other people have already done. And we're not doing the work we should be doing, the higher level, higher value work that we would probably enjoy more as well. So that's our gut reaction and our tendency. So what we've got to do is actually learn to swap that a bit, which is when I was talking earlier about how you've got to break those habits. And instead, what you've got to do is develop new habits. And the new habits is really about developing your own resource bank to help you have some questions where you can throw questions out at them. So very quickly, it could just take a minute or two. So if you are busy, it doesn't take any more time. Once you've built a bit of confidence around asking some questions, and there's no bad question, by the way, you can just ask another question, right? If you ask a question that's not very good, left it and go, actually, let me ask you a better question. That's fine too. But
That's what I do on this podcast, by the way, Laura. So yeah, I'm used to that for sure.
So, that's the reality. So actually, you could ask some questions that might draw on their own resilience, their own knowledge, their own reflection. So you could delve into their past memory and say, what have you done in the past that's worked? How have you solved this before? You might get them to change perspective if they're stuck in the way they're looking at it. If you were to look at it in a different way or from someone else's perspective, or how would your colleague approach this? Or if I wasn't here, how might Dave or Paddy approach this? So you can get them to think about changing perspective, ask them questions to look at it from different angles, and also actually ask them what options they've considered so far. Because the other thing you want people to do is not come to you before they've done some of their own thinking. And they might have already considered a couple of things, and actually both of those things might solve the problem. They just didn't have the confidence and they were looking for your reciprocation. So by asking them what they've already thought about, what they've already considered, what work they've already done, or who they've already spoken to, that will build their habits. The next time they come to you, have done a lot of that already. And then you can say, great, well, of those ideas, which one do you think is most likely to work? And as long as you think it's got as good a chance, I think you're putting up with, let them go away with that. And then you can say, right, I've got a bit more time this afternoon. Why don't we pick up? And you can let me know how that went. Let's pick up at 4:00 today or whatever it is, and just make sure you then do that. But if you take that approach, you will start buying your time back very quickly, because people will come to you with solutions, not with problems, and you will stop taking the work on yourself.
I definitely need that in my life. I think this week's just been so manic, and I do feel like I've taken on way more than I should have, having come back off leave for a couple of weeks. So yeah, I was already stacked, and then I've just volunteered to do a whole bunch of more stuff. So definitely need to get the book. Okay, my second scenario is delivering bad news. Now, I know for me, this is one of the toughest things to do, because having jolly conversations, happy conversations, I think I'm okay at. I love those conversations, but it's delivering that bad news. So as a product leader, you've got to deliver bad news to a colleague, and how do you do that without demotivating them? Yeah, what would you say on that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, just even the way you're talking and how you set that up, Paddy, and just think about the negativity and how emotionally charged that was. You don't like it, you don't want to do it, you want to avoid it. And most of us naturally tend to avoid leaning into a challenging conversation. We're kind of just going to run a mile from it. And that's why it's so important to really build your own confidence and capability of how to have those conversations. So you kind of take the challenge out of the challenging conversation. And it is a really common problem. It's a common enough problem that's just got a whole module in the program, actually, because we have to build the habits of thinking through these challenging conversations from different perspectives. And that's the best way really to do it. So if you need to deliver bad news or have any challenging conversation of any any type, you really need to kind of do a bit of a mini exercise. It doesn't have to take more than a couple of minutes necessarily, but you need to prepare for that conversation by thinking about different scenarios. So kind of really think about what is the actual situation. You say it's bad news, but what is the actual situation? What is the impact of this actually going to be on the individual I need to speak to? Who else might be involved? What would be a positive outcome from this conversation? So first of all, really think through what is really the situation that you're facing, and then think about, from their perspectives. So take an angle, a lens from their perspective. How might they react? Is it a difficult conversation because there's a lack of skill or a lack of will? Maybe is it a motivation problem, or they just don't have the knowledge? Is it a learning style issue? There's a conflict with somebody, or there's they they have a particular way of wanting to acquire information and knowledge, and you're trying to share something in a different way, and it's not landing and it's jarring. Is it a belief issue? Have they got limiting beliefs around what things should be? Or is there a values conflict that you're not aware of? So it's actually doing a little bit of thinking about where are they in this conversation. So you're prepared almost and considering their perspective first. And then think about it from your perspective. What assumptions are you making? We can all be very quick to make assumptions. It might not be a difficult conversation at all. That bad news might be good news for them. Had you even thought about the perspective of what their assumption might be? And if you might want to sort of change their working hours, they might be thrilled to do that because actually they've got something else going on at home that would be really helpful for them to accommodate around. So you shouldn't really make assumptions, and actually spending a minute just questioning your own assumptions, which is what's causing often the stress, as we think it's going to be more challenging than it really is. And then once you've kind of looked at those different scenarios and those different perspectives, then thinking about what are a couple of good questions I could ask to make this feel like a more inclusive conversation, not me just telling them and sharing bad news. So how can I set it up? What might be a couple of powerful questions I could build into this conversation so that they feel it's a two-way discussion?
Oh, brilliant. So there's a lot of empathy here as part of that process, it sounds like, right? So as you mentioned, putting yourself in their shoes, really getting into their mindset of how this is going to impact them, which is great advice, because it's so easy for us to sometimes say, oh, I told John this and he reacted like a child or whatever. I can't believe their reaction. And often it's because we don't know what's going on with John. John might have had the most terrible day, and now I've just added more weight to his shoulders.
Yeah, so it's just being a bit more mindful, but it's also just taking a moment to reflect on our own assumptions, because often we're going in a bit scared, a bit nervous about having this conversation. We don't really want to have this conversation. That comes across in our body language as well. Whereas if we put a little bit of thought into it, and when I just not like a big thing to go away and do some prep, it might just be 3 or 4 minutes. You're about to go and deliver, you said, some bad news. So it's worth the consideration of a few minutes to reflect on how it might land. How else could you deliver it? What sort of tone, what do they need to understand? What's going on in their lives, so that you can make sure you're really being productive. But actually, often these conversations are not that challenging. When you get into them and you handle them in the right way, they could be fantastic conversations. And I can think of some I've had personally myself, and fairly recently, where people have come back to me saying, that was a really difficult conversation, but God, I feel so fantastic now. And they're coming out the other side of what was a difficult conversation, and they actually realize that it's given them an opportunity to really reflect. They're much happier with the outcome. They've been able to craft the outcome, and it's worked better, and it's lightened the load. So yeah, we shouldn't make assumptions whether it's challenging.
Now, research is great because we can really put things to the test, and that's what it's designed for, to validate our hypothesis. So you mentioned at the start of the episode, you did some research with the London School of Economics. What was the most surprising finding about the impact of this approach that you found from that research?
Yeah, so I sort of briefly mentioned at the beginning that this research took place across 62 organizations in 14 sectors. And the research is based on managers in those organizations going through 20 modules of the Star Manager program, which is kind of the program that the book's based around. And they went through these modules, and there was obviously data taken for the government at the beginning and the end of this program. And London School of Economics ran it as a full formal randomized control study. So it was all blind data. They got 100% data set, which they'd never had before. So it was probably the biggest study in coaching ever done globally, to our knowledge. It was a really, really thorough study to see whether operational coaching can drive not just performance, but also productivity at scale. So that was the context. When we got to the results, I guess what was most surprising, there was a few things that were really surprising and lots of fantastic outcomes. But what was most surprising was the government's response to it. When the data was presented back, which had all levels of managers, which had C-suite board members right down to aspiring and first-line managers on this program, which had every age group from, every one of 5 generations was represented. We'd had large companies and small companies in the study, and we'd had kind of new startups and very established organizations. It had, and also ethnic balance and gender balance. It had been really robust population sample. And the government said when they saw the data, this isn't possible. It's not possible that this has worked for everyone. So can you please cut the data again? And can you take out the big companies, take out the senior leaders, take out the junior leaders, and let's really understand where this is helpful as a concept. So LSE went away and recut the data for 3 months, looking at it from every angle, took every data set out and cut it every way they could. And they came back and said, whichever way we cut it, we get the same outcome, which is this does drive productivity, it does drive performance, it improves retention, it delivers an ROI. Whichever way we cut it, we get the same outcome. And the government said, it's just not possible. It's just too good to be true that we don't believe you. So the government gave it to their statisticians in the government, who spent another 3 months cutting the data. And then 3 months later, they came back and said, okay, it's robust, it's universal. And I guess what was surprising about it, surprising was that no one believed it. Even though it wasn't made up, most academic studies I've learned recently have a lot of false data. So you get some data given to you in a study, and then the university makes up data that's similar in order to create robust data. But because we capture data in the program, we were able to give LSE 100% real data set. So I guess we've never really questioned the data because we've always had it. But obviously academically people do, because it's not always 100% real, I suppose. So that was interesting. But I think what was really interesting for me is we'd always assumed it was universal because we've obviously been running elements and programs in different ways for many, many years. But the fact that you can have a skill, a superpower, because it is a superpower, that is equally valuable if you're an aspiring manager, if you're a first-line manager, if you're a senior leader, or if you're running an organization, and gives you a common language and a common way of being as you evolve through your career, I think was really fantastic to have that underlined. I think it's surprising that, that it was, that no one believed it. But I think what's fantastic is it is kind of that baseline skill that if we all had could really make a massive difference to everyone personally, but also to everyone in a team, everyone in an organization.
Oh, wow. That's just blown my mind. I mean, how can someone question the data and run it through their own team and then come back again and go, wow, this is
even robust, right? It's been tested every which way. So this is real. When we talk about, so people always say it's too good to be true, but it is real. It is the data, the results are fantastic, but it is also really real.
I'm going to say, just run it through ChatGPT and you'll find out the truth. Anyway, no, we won't go there.
Well, I think it tells you quite a lot, right?
It's actually quite good at number crunching, so it probably isn't too bad. Now, if somebody out there is applying this approach, this questioning style and this mindset, how can they measure if this is actually improving collaboration, decision-making, and sort of delivery outcomes? Like, how can an individual prove that it's working?
Yeah, I think at organizational level, there's lots of data we can evidence and share of increasing management capability. At individual level, there's a few things that happen that are really, really important. The first thing is you will automatically start feeling less stressed, because one of the big shifts you make as a manager when you kind of build this capability and this superpower is that we talked about doing too much at the beginning. So you stop taking on a lot of the doing. So you do a lot less doing, and that buys you time for more coaching and leading. But when you're doing that coaching and leading, you're spending less time doing that than you were spending the doing overall, because your team are now stepping up and doing more. So one of the first things people report getting back is about a day a week back. So if someone's a full-time employee, they'll get roughly 1 day a week back, 20% of their time to work on high value tasks or things they really want to do, things they enjoy more. So that's the first thing. And actually in the book, there's some lovely stories of people actually going down to 4 days a week and even 3 days a week and still doing a better job than they were doing 5 days a week and still being less stressed. So there's some real wins. We get lots of reports about time back. There's a whole chapter in the book about it because we get so many reports. It's a real personal win for the individuals on the program. So that's the first thing. But the other thing, I think, if you're an individual going through it, you will notice your relationships change with your team and also managing up. So the people will want to start working with you and for you. You will start realizing that you're building talent around you, that they're taking on more, that people are, your team is suddenly noticed for being a higher performing team. Your colleagues will be coming up with more ideas. Your team will they'll be more innovative, more collaborative, more creative. You'll be using questions. We've had some organizations that say, we've changed the way we run a meeting. We start every meeting now by actually saying, what was a better question to address in this? What questions would be asked in this meeting to get a better outcome? So we start utilizing the concept of questions to have more innovation. You'll get better wins. You'll have better client relationships. We get so many sales teams talk about the impact on their client relationships and, suddenly turning around a big contract they weren't expecting to get. So certainly things like innovation, collaboration, and a bit more, it's just more fun. You enjoy your work more as well. So there's some of the easy things, but certainly at organizational level, if you're a more senior leader listening to this, it'll be things like retention, overall increase in management capability, and actually tangible ROI, because we capture in the system when you're going through the program examples of what you've done differently and the impact on productivity or engagement, on cost savings, on revenue generation, and that all adds to quite a big ROI.
Will AI change anything in this space, do you think?
I think it will change a lot in this space, because I think the whole idea of accidental managers is based on us being subject matter experts and getting promoted because we were good at something. The reality is, in the next couple of years, we used to get promoted for our knowledge, and we could hold knowledge as the things that people paid us our money for. AI is going to take that knowledge. Most of us are going to have that knowledge. Like you just joked, I can just go into ChatGPT and they can do what the London School of Economics, one of the top universities in the world, could do, can't it? The reality is, there's a lot of our jobs. If mine's spending my time as a manager and doing the logistical planning and the project planning and the, workforce management, and not doing the actually how am I developing and really empowering my colleagues, that half of their job can be done by AI. And in a few years' time, that'll be automated, or even a few weeks, the way things are moving right now. So the reality is, so much of what we perceive to be management and leadership is going to not be valued because it will become a commodity. What's left is the human side of our role. It's the underdeveloped human side of our role. Is how are we going to become known to be that leader and manager that absolutely knows how to create fantastic teams, how we can get the most out of our talent, how we can inspire our talent and engage our talent to contribute more higher level thinking to the organizations and actually create these fantastic workplace cultures. And so for me, AI is going to devalue what we currently think is high value in management leadership, and operational coaching and some of those more human-based skills are going to become more important, and what's going to set you apart as a leader and manager.
I don't think too many people would be disappointed with that, hopefully, because I would have thought that's the way it should have been in the first place. But we somehow slipped into this other trap of just rewarding people for their knowledge. But that's another conversation, I think, and a whole new podcast is there.
Absolutely.
Now, as we've been talking, I was thinking about my kids, my family, and I have some really tricky conversations with all of those folks. Can this approach be applied in your personal life outside of work? And if so, what kind of results have you seen?
So I mentioned earlier, we have the people capturing successes as they're going through the missions in the program. And so we always assume these would be pretty much fairly work-based missions because that's what the program is based around. We get so many people write to us with personal stories about how it's impacted their relationships at work and the relationships at home. And so I've got a couple I could just read out to you, which are just coming recently. So one person wrote, Star Coach has been a fantastic experience for me. I can honestly say it's changed how I work. Most notably, the program has unexpectedly enhanced my personal life, specifically my relationship with my son, who has undiagnosed ADHD and autism traits. By adopting a new approach at home, our environment is calmer, we are happier, we concentrate on the positives, and these changes have greatly benefited my partner and daughter as well. Star has enriched my life in more ways than just work, and I can never unlearn this stuff. I mean, getting stuff like that lights us up. And one of my favorites that we put in the book actually is, my wife had a tricky problem with an old friend. Rather than responding by giving advice, which is my default, recognize that, I reflected on the situation and asked more insightful questions about how she felt and what she thought she might do about the situation that was obviously playing on her mind. Financial value, 0. Happier wife, priceless. There's another story in the book from actually a merchant banker who talked about how it's completely transformed the relationship with his son, who he had a very challenging relationship with. So these are everywhere. So we put some in the book as well because it's so important, but we get them daily into us, and some, really tackling some big issues like bereavement and helping with some really challenging family moments. But lots and lots of benefits to relationships at home as well as at work.
Wow, that's incredible. I love those stories. And I can only imagine, seeing that sort of feedback coming back, and as an author, just how that would make you feel. So, well done. Well done. That's just awesome. My last question to finish off is my fun question I ask every guest. So, Laura, if I could give you any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, something that really knocks you, something that frustrates you, what would that be and why?
Oh, if I had a magic wand and I could get rid of one thing at work, it would be the line manager lottery. And the line manager lottery, the lottery, it's when you have a great line manager one day and you're really inspired, and then they get promoted or they move company and you get a new manager, and then within months you're leaving the job because you just don't want to go to work anymore. That needs to end. We can't live a life of where, depending on who our manager is, makes us happy or sad. So I want to abolish that, please. And I want instead have a world where we create epic workplace cultures, where we have engaging, productive, inclusive, and collaborative workplace cultures where we all want to be, and it's really, really fun to be. And we believe we can have that if we can repurpose management to have operational coaching at its heart as a management style, and have worlds powered by star managers using STAR to create better workplaces.
Oh, brilliant. I actually once quit a job or resigned because of a bad manager, but then unresigned a day later because I found an amazing manager and they convinced me to unresign. So I think that's a great idea. Let's do that. It would cut out so much.
So I've resigned to get away from a bad manager, and it was my favorite job I was ever in that I resigned from because of that. So, I love the company, but I just couldn't work in a toxic environment anymore. And so it happens to all of us. Actually, over 50% of us leave our jobs to get away from a bad line manager. It's almost half of the population of working people have done it at some point.
They should term that as company divorce or something, and they should have company divorce rates that they track organizations by, right? Wouldn't that be a great stat to be able to see on Glassdoor or one of these websites where you can check up on the sort of feedback?
I love it.
Right. Well, Laura, just before we finish off, what's the name of the book, just in case anybody's forgotten? And also, what is your website? And we will post a whole bunch of links in the show notes as well so that people can purchase the book.
Fantastic. So the book's called The Answer is a Question, the missing superpower that changes everything and will transform your impact as a manager and leader. If you want to get hold of me, I am the only Laura Ashley Timms on LinkedIn, I believe. The website to learn more about the book is about the program is starmanager.global, and the book is theanswerisaquestion.com.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Laura, honestly, it's been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I feel a lot wiser than I was right at the start. I'm going to actually implement some of these tips over the weekend, and we'll see how we go. But no, thank you so much once again.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www. It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favourite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again. www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.